Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Ex Post Watcho, a movie retrospective podcast. I am your host, Jason, and I am joined by my friend and co-host, Ilana. How are you doing today, Ilana?
I'm just peachy. How are you today, Jason?
I'm doing great. This is a moment I have long awaited. We're going to talk about Zodiac. I'm just going to be upfront here with everyone. This is possibly my favorite movie of all time. It's very it's in the top 5. It's my favorite David Fincher movie. Giving it 10 out of 10 right now. 10 out of 10 Jake Gyllenhaals for Zodiac. When's the last time you've seen Zodiac?
It's been about a handful of years ago, at least 3 or 4, I would say. I really like this movie too. I've seen it probably a handful of times. But yeah, it's been a little while. I'm definitely not as familiar with it as you. I haven't watched it as recently as you probably have.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, definitely not.
Close enough. Yeah, Zodiac came out in 2007. This is the newest movie we've reviewed. It's 13-ish, 14 years old at this point. Directed by David Fincher, the great David Fincher. What's your favorite David Fincher movie?
Oh my God, you're gonna put me on the spot. You know what? I was gonna pull up all the David Fincher movies. I don't have them all memorized. Hold on, let me look at this.
Is it Benjamin Button? Why is it Benjamin Button?
Not Benjamin Button. Let me see. You know what? Oh my God, there's so many too.
What's your least favorite David Fincher movie?
My least favorite David Fincher movie?
What's your exactly in the middle David Fincher movie? Name a David Fincher movie.
Okay, so I don't love The Social Network. Not because of David Fincher. It's just I don't give a shit about. Again, I'm sick of us fucking glorifying shitty men in movies. I haven't seen Mank yet. I loved Gone Girl. I loved it more than I expected to. I mean, obviously, Seven is a great movie. Fight Club's a great movie. Panic Room's probably my least favorite that I have seen.
I've seen that movie once, and I don't remember anything about it. Jared Leto's in it, right? He's got dreadlocks. Uh-oh.
Oh, fuck, yeah. Yeah, see, I kind of zoned that out. I really, really like Zodiac. I think Zodiac is, you know what? It might be my favorite David Fincher movie, too. Because I like Fight Club, but I'm not as, psychotic about that movie as some people are.
Man, Fight Club was, such a big deal at the time.
It was huge.
Blew my mind as a little 17-year-old. I'm like, I'm learning things. I'm having deep thoughts here about masculinity.
We should go back and watch Seven at one point, because really all I remember about Seven is what everyone remembers about Seven. What's in the box? In the box. Yeah. That's not all I remember, but that was a great movie. Brad Pitt, our guy.
Yeah, he's a big David Fincher muse, I guess. He's been in a couple
Fincher
movies.
Knew, not enough people gave that guy enough credit, and I think Fincher kind of turned that around for him.
Something to this incredibly handsome man. He might have a career.
Let me help this guy out.
I never saw Benjamin Button. I think that one I made it 10 or 15 minutes into. I've never really slogged through that movie. I assume it's terrible.
Yeah. You know what? I thought it was fine, but I only watched it the one time.
And I think around The Social Network was kind of where Fincher sort of has lost me a little bit. I don't know. He's not made a bad movie as far as I know, despite theoretically saying Benjamin Button sucks. But The Social Network, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Gone Girl, I think they're good movies, but they all kind of left me a little underwhelmed for David Fincher. David Fincher, I just kind of expected something bigger and more, I don't know. I think especially because Dragon Tattoo, there was a Swedish version a couple years before that was perfectly good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and the Fincher one, I watched them not too far apart, and I was like, the Fincher one kind of looks the same. The Swedish one looks like a Fincher movie.
Yeah.
And then and that was based on a book, and Gone Girl was okay. That was okay. It was also based on a book. But
Yes.
I don't know. For some reason, that kind of makes me like, not as excited about like novel adaptations of like popular books.
So I have not read Gone Girl, but when it like blew up, I was actually working at a bookstore, and it was like one of those things where all the local gals were like, "Oh my God, have you read this book?" And I was like, if all these gals are into this book, I don't know that it's my kind of thing. Not to be a bitch, but whatever. There it is. And I never did read it, but I was like, I'll watch this movie. David Fincher might be good. And I think that's why I really loved it, because I was expecting, I was like, what? Gone Girl's like a Fincher thing that he's going to take this on? So, and I really, really, I think Rosamund Pike is brilliant. Like, I think she's one of my, I think she can kind of do no wrong. I think she's so good to watch. So this is now a podcast about Gone Girl.
Yeah, I'll give it credit for it did go in directions I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
It's fine. I don't know why I'm being so sour.
That fucking scene with Neil Patrick Harris and her will never leave my mind.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty intense.
I went into like full shock. I had anyway, whoops, spoiler alert.
I remember a lot of discourse at that time being like, this woman's bad because it teaches men that women are evil or something like that.
I mean, I was like, yeah, girl, fuck his shit up. Don't step out of line.
Wait. She is the like explicit protagonist in your eyes? I thought she was supposed to be like a psycho. Well, you know what? Let's not talk about Gone Girl. That's a different thing for another day. We're here to talk about Zodiac. Jake Gyllenhaal is in this.
Yeah, he is.
Fucking love Jake Gyllenhaal.
He's great. Mark Ruffalo, he's great.
Yeah, I think this is like the first thing I saw Mark Ruffalo in, and I was immediately like, I like this guy. I want to see this guy in more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Downey Jr. kind of had a bit of a career bounce back, I think, around this time.
I'm not always on his side, but I like him in this.
Yeah, I find he definitely has a character that he plays in a lot of stuff, which is just basically like smart, know-it-all guy with good one-liners and stuff like that. And I'm a little tired of it, especially after all the Iron Man movies.
I didn't even watch those. I got like 5 minutes into an Iron Man movie and I was like, I can't.
Oh, Robert Downey Jr. is the face of the Marvel franchise. He's in like all of the movies.
I know.
A lot of them. But he works in this. I think this is a really, really good use of his personality. Anthony Edwards from ER. Goose.
Gotta love him.
He's great.
Brian Cox.
Yeah.
Gotta love him.
Well, yeah. Anyway, Zodiac's great. 10 out of 10. I don't know. Tune in next week. We'll watch it and come back. It's long as shit. Fuck, 157 minutes. Wow. All right.
We can't stop with the long movies.
Pack a lunch and watch Zodiac. See you later.
Yummy.
And we're back from the swinging 70s. We watched Zodiac. Ilana, it's been a while since you've seen it. What'd you think of Zodiac?
It was great. It was pretty much what I remembered. Really solid Fincher film. It's funnier than I remembered. I think what stuck in my head, even as I was watching it, the things that I really remembered or recalled were the really horrifying moments where like I felt physically ill watching it. And then all the other stuff in between, with a lot of the banter between a lot like the cops or the journalists, stuff like that, was kind of a pleasant surprise because I didn't recall it that way. So yeah, it was great. Really good movie. Loved it when I first saw it. Loved it when I watched it last night. 2 thumbs up. How was your rewatching? Because you watch this, what did you say, like every year or something? Yeah,
it's one of my favorite movies, and I'll just throw it on. So probably on average once a year I end up watching it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's good. It was what I expected. I think why I like this movie so much and why it works as being that thing I can just end up watching is it brings in a lot of different genres or just sort of elements of different things and really kind of glues them all together really well. And each of those things is really good. So at its core, it's like a police procedural mystery. You know, it's people doing detective work trying to, solve the crime. But it also is like a buddy comedy, like a lot of it, because I think the relationships between like the different main characters, like they spend a lot of time together talking through the case and kind of figuring things out as they go. So it has like a lot of humor to it. And it's got some thriller horror elements in some certain scenes, and I think those are executed like perfectly. And it's a period piece. It's set during the 70s, and it really feels like it, you know, like it does feel like I mean, I can't speak for the accuracy not having been around in that time, but it feels very authentic, you know, like it I mean, it doesn't look like a movie made in the 70s, but it does look like it actually takes place in the 70s. So it's kind of entertaining in that regard. Nice to look at vintage San Francisco.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me too.
So yeah, it's a good movie. I said in the beginning I was just going to throw out 10 out of 10, and I was, you know, really thinking about that as I watched it this time. And I guess the one maybe negative about it is the last hour does kind of change in terms of the first 2 hours are like, or, you know, hour and 40 or whatever, are really high energy. It's just kind of like there's constantly stuff happening. It's, you know, it's funny. It's mysteries being unraveled. The thriller elements are there. And then the last hour kind of changes and becomes like kind of a grind. And I think part of that is like supposed to be like, you know, what's happening in the movie, but it's just not as fun. That last hour, I'm always like, oh, okay. I'm sort of just kind of waiting for it to end at that point. So I think, you know, that's maybe the one knock I'll put against it is like, I don't mind that it's so long, but I just kind of, it always loses me just a little bit, that last chunk.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. It didn't lose me, and I watched this really late last night. It was one of those things where I put it on late and thought I'll get through part of it and watch the rest tomorrow. But I didn't. I watched the whole thing because I was really enjoying it. But there are a few scenes near the end and in that sort of last hour that just don't really work for me. We can talk about those when we get to it, I guess. But I completely understand what you're saying and how that tone really shifts. It's almost like a whole other movie, because also I remembered this. Jake Gyllenhaal is really billed as like the star of this movie, and Robert Downey, along with Robert Downey Jr. And like, they're actually not in it a lot. We see more of Jake Gyllenhaal's character. I don't remember the character's name. Robert Graysmith. Graysmith. Yeah. We see more of him in the second half and sort of his spiral into this investigation when everyone sort of lets it go. I remembered it being more of a Jake Gyllenhaal film. But I completely understand what you're saying. It's like it's two different movies. It's like two different perspectives or two different approaches to the same story.
Yeah, I think maybe my reaction to it this time is part of just having seen it so many times. Like, so I just always know like this part of the movie is the slower part, and because the first chunk is so just consistently like high energy, interesting, engaging. I'm always, you know, watching it for the 20th time. It's like, all right, well, I know that this is the, you know, the downer part.
Yeah.
But it is like really an ensemble piece. Like I do think of it as a Jake Gyllenhaal movie because like he does get a ton of time to be in the movie and be a character. It helps that it's so long. But because it's such a like long story, you do, you know, the characters and the perspectives shift often between him and the police characters with Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards. And yeah, so it's kind of like, it is a Jake Gyllenhaal led thing, I guess. Like he's the first guy you sort of see.
Right.
But it is like an ensemble piece. Like you spend a lot of time with a lot of different characters.
Yeah, which I liked. Sometimes I don't love it, but I think it overall really works in this movie. It's just, I don't know. I find Fincher always has good pacing in his films, and even talking about how the last part of the movie seems like a very big change in tone. It's still there's still a solid through line, and it's still it doesn't feel disjointed at all when we're shifting perspectives. So
yeah,
Good job, Fincher.
Knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. For once.
So this movie has a great opening. It's a warm summer night. I feel the warmth in this opening scene of like, it's just like July 4th and everyone's outside having fun. I think this opening shot is like both very sort of nostalgic, but kind of creepy because it's from the perspective of a car. And it's just like this fixed camera, like someone's staring out a car window at all the people outside. And then this young couple gets together in the car and goes and drives off to make out Allie. And they have
Classic.
like a weird dynamic and exchange going on there.
Yeah, it's very odd. That's one thing I really like about this film is like nothing's super polished in terms of like the characters often in film are presented to us like, oh, hi, I'm Susie and I'm Bobby and we're clearly in love. And it's clearly, this is exactly what it is. In so many scenes, even, scenes where those two characters aren't necessarily adversaries, there's still sometimes quite a bit of tension or awkwardness. Like it's so real, which is what makes this movie so, I think, difficult to watch in those kind of horror type scenes because it feels like it could be happening like down the street from you.
Yeah, their interaction seems very like she's married or something and they're seeing each other and we find out later backstory about she maybe knew the Zodiac guy or had someone in her life who she was not comfortable with. And then we get the Zodiac shows up and murders them. The part where like the car pulls up behind them and then it drives away and then it comes back just reminded me of the opening scene of Super Troopers where like the cops pull them over and then they drive away and then all of a sudden they slam in reverse and back up behind them and like yell at them to pull over again.
I can't remember that movie very well.
I think that's where the inspiration came from.
Yeah, that car returning is horrifying.
Yeah, and then it's just this like tense scene where you're like, I think something bad's gonna happen.
The lighting as well, like it's so harsh, like not for us as the viewer, but I don't know, you really feel like you're in that situation with them. The tension, the anxiety that I felt was pretty real. And I love how he shoots the killer. Like we see enough of him that he's not such a mystery, but we also, there's no identifiable features that we get. It's just all, I think, really masterful. It's just like the perfect way to build tension. And there's like no jump scares, which I think is also, I hate a jump scare because I think Spielberg talks about this, but like that's how you lose your audience's trust. So they kind of check out a little bit and they don't do that in this movie. It's just constant tension building, which is so much worse.
Yeah. And when something bad does happen, it just happens, you see him pull out the gun and shoot them or, stab people.
Mm-hmm.
And then after they get shot, it starts playing Hurdy Gurdy Man by Donovan. And that song just like has this unsettling kind of sound to it, even though it's sort of like a pleasant song. I think it works really well.
Yeah.
Then we're introduced to the San Francisco Chronicle. Pro tip, I guess, if you want your scene to sound energetic, throw some bongos on there. As soon as you hear those bongos, you just know things are happening. We get a sense of the newsroom. We meet Jake Gyllenhaal as Robert Graysmith. He's a young cartoonist dude who's a little spaced out, kind of lives in his own world. And then they get a letter from the Zodiac saying, hey, I killed some people and publish this letter or I'll kill more people. And this is where the Robert and Paul buddy comedy begins. Which is their relationship. They really are like, I don't know, straight man, funny man.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. is always, I think we talked about this in the intro, maybe. I'm not always on board for like his stuff. I think it can be kind of too much sometimes. Like, it's like the whole, here's the Robert Downey Jr. thing happening again, but it works so well, I think, in this movie. And there's just enough of it to not be annoying.
He's almost like the most obnoxious version of Robert Downey Jr. in this movie, like his character. But I think it works more than a lot of other things. Like, I kind of find his Sherlock a little... I find all Sherlocks kind of obnoxious these days, actually. But I find his, like, I don't know, it's just this, like, characters that are smartasses and know everything but are kind of obnoxious at the same time I find them hard to stomach after a while. But I think in this case it works quite well because, like, you're kind of supposed to hate him a little bit or just be like, man, this guy's like he's a bit of a fuck up. Like, he is an asshole. So it just kind of all works better in that regard.
He's still charming, though. He's still got that. He's still likable despite the fact that you might be a little leery of him, or you kind of feel bad for... okay, I'll get this out of the way right away, too. Robert Graysmith, this character is played... and I didn't recall this from my first couple of viewings. He's played in a way that he's so naive. He's very childlike to the point where there were scenes where I was like, this is unbelievable that a grown man could function in society with this level of... I don't know. I actually looked up to see if, like, Robert Graysmith, like, maybe has... I don't want to, like, insult anyone, but, like, autism or something like that, like, where maybe his social cues and his understanding of them are a little bit compromised or whatever. Like, I was like, what's the deal here? Because it just went a little bit far for me in some moments.
I get where you're coming from. I think his character is definitely naive and possibly on the spectrum. And I don't know how much that aligns with the actual Robert Graysmith. I think for the context of this movie, I buy it. I actually do believe it. Maybe the part that is harder to buy into maybe is the naivete. The, like, I'll just go check out this thing in the middle of the night at this guy's house.
Let me just go to this stranger's house.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know. Like, he's obsessed with this case. People make bad decisions like that, you know? What I do believe is his interpersonal lack of awareness with other people. Early on in the movie, it's kind of more played for laughs. It doesn't. It's not as, like, severe because it's just like him and Robert Downey Jr. and he just kind of has this childlike way of being where he doesn't understand. He takes everything that's asked of him quite literally. Like, there's one part in the movie where Elias Koteas asks him, "Do you smoke?" And he's like, "Once in high school." You know, like, that's kind of how he operates. But as the movie goes on, he meets a woman and has a relationship and they have kids, and he just is completely negligent of his family because he's just obsessed with the case and doesn't seem to even understand that that's happening or the consequences of it until, like, too late.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I wonder what that choice was based on, because this movie spans, like, over 10 or about 10 years, and his awareness doesn't seem to increase. Like, he doesn't mature in that sense throughout this movie. Like you said, like, the consequences become more dire as we go along for his sort of aloof approach to things. It was just I had not picked up on that, like, in previous viewings of this movie, and this time it really stood out to me. Anyway, I don't know if anyone's listening to this and they know, you know, and if anyone has talked about this, or if Jake Gyllenhaal has said, like, I made this choice because of this, or Fincher's been like, oh, we wanted him to approach it this way, please let me know, because it was just it was an interesting choice, and I do think it works most of the time. But yeah, sometimes it's a bit, I was like, would this grown man really do this, knowing all he knows about Zodiac? Anyway.
There's a murder by the lakeside. This is a funny / not funny scene. I think the setup is really good with the couple, like, laying on the blanket and they're talking to each other, and then Zodiac shows up and, you know, you see him walking towards them. The way they build that up as, like, scary because it's a beautiful sunny day. You know, it's not where you'd expect to see a murder scene take place. I think they set that up really well, and then once they're kind of in that interaction, it's intense.
Oh my God, that guy! I was like, "Shut up, man!" When he's trying to reason with him, and at first I was like, "This is unrealistic," and then I was like, "I don't know what I would do if someone was standing there with a gun pointed at me, telling my partner to like tie me up." Oh my God, this was a scene that really I remembered this scene almost shot for shot. Like it was. That's stuck in my head. It's so unsettling. There's no score, no music, no sound effects. It's, well, other than just, you know, nature sounds.
And stabbing sounds.
Oh, fuck.
So I do totally believe this as like two college kids, you know, like upper middle class kids kind of dealing with a situation like this, and him being like, I can help you, you know, even more than you think. He's a sociology major.
Yeah, they're them trying to reason with him. Unreal.
Yeah, and then he asks him like, "Was the gun loaded?" And he shows him, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, he also tells him we could freeze. Like, you can't leave us out here. We could freeze. The guy's like tying you up with a gun pointed at you.
Yeah, and then he stabs him, and it's just like horrifying, like the way they show that.
Mm-hmm.
We get a cool special effects shot, which is when we see the lead up to the cab driver getting murdered. I think, so this whole chunk of the movie, we basically see like the cab driving around, and then Zodiac kills the guy, and then we're introduced to the police characters. This is an example of a thing this movie does a bunch of times that I think is done quite well, which is like explain things to you in interesting ways. Or set context in interesting ways. So the shot of the cab is just like visually very neat. Like it's got to be CGI how they did this. And as this cab is driving around, you're hearing radio callers talking about the Zodiac killer. And I don't know if they reveal any like new information in that part, but it's just very good at kind of showing you how this is a thing that like the whole city or state or maybe country is aware of and like talking about, and like, you know, it's an active serial killer. It's not a thing in the past, it's happening now. So I love that for the world building of it.
Yeah, I think the, like you said, the world building in this whole movie is so good. Like truly from everything from like the sets, the hair, the makeup, costume, the sound editing and design in this were like, I think one of the best. Like I don't usually notice those things, but it was so good. Like it really pulls you into those moments. You can, like, I had physical reactions to this movie. I don't always do that. It really sucks you in. And I agree. I think like they do often like voiceover, or they'll have little things hanging on the wall in the background. And like just all those little details and those small decisions are so perfect. And on their own, they don't really mean much, but in the context of this world, they're so important. And I think like that's why people love this movie so much. It just elevates it to the next level.
Yeah, like they do it a couple times where they show the passage of time. So like one part, I can't remember which section it is, but it's just giving you some context on like what's going on with the Zodiac, and you hear the different characters basically reading Zodiac letters that have come in over the span of time. And it works because it's like, it's not just narration. You can totally believe that one dude is in the office reading it to the other guy. Just the way those lines are delivered. And there's like text flying around, like newspaper. It sounds a bit ridiculous. It sounds really hokey, but it works quite well.
Yeah.
There's a big 4-year gap at one point, and in a very kind of bold move, it's literally 1 minute where the screen is just black. And it's playing audio of like music kind of from the period, different songs, and radio or television broadcast footage of people saying like, you know, the war in Vietnam ended and this happened and that happened. So it's just like, I thought that was just a really cool way of like grounding the movie in time and giving you like a, you know, this is how long it's been, this much stuff has happened, and this was going on in the world at the time. And then there's another
I actually don't remember this moment, which makes me wonder if we watched different versions, but I don't think we did. Maybe it just was so seamless that I actually didn't make note of it.
I actually think it might be that, because I've seen this movie a bunch of times, but it wasn't until this time I actually thought, how long has this screen been black? Because if it was for like 5 or 10 seconds, it's just a fade and then it fades to the next thing. But it is literally a whole minute. And I think like the audio that they put in there just works well enough. And that is like the dividing line for now it's the Jake Gyllenhaal obsession piece.
Right. Talking about timelines, I like also they kind of present it in an unusual way at first. Sometimes placing captioning or text on the screen saying 2 years later, we're at this place doesn't really work. This did, and they started it out in an interesting way where it's 12 hours later, 6 hours later, 5 hours later, and we just have all these jump cuts, and it's I don't know that I've ever watched a film or TV show where they've done that in that way. And then later on, we get like 2 years later or 4 years later. But I thought it was an interesting choice. I mean, if we look at, law enforcement, police work, detective work, and journalism, we're almost like speaking their language. They're really bringing us into that world of really being specific about what that timeline is. And I thought that was super effective too.
Yeah, the movie is just peppered with like X amount of time later, and it does kind of go from like the first 48 hours kind of thing where like this, and then then you get these bigger chunks of time, which is kind of like how the Zodiac killer case as a character in and of itself sort of is like, it just kind of becomes more like grindy and right. Like an albatross, whereas at the beginning it's like fast paced and interesting.
Yeah.
So cab driver gets shot, and we get Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards as Dave Toschi and Bill something, the two cops. And this is the other kind of buddy comedy in this movie. Like their whole relationship is just like fun to watch. They're like they're clearly good friends and they respect each other, but David is more like a character, whereas Bill is just I find him very funny. I think he's a very funny character, but he's just so like professional and kind of to the point, and a very like almost flat personality. Not flat, like he's he's not like completely without charisma, but he's just a very like quiet spoken guy,
Yeah, they played these characters so well. I mean, I think they're written well, but they played them really well that way. Like they do feel like real people that you could actually know. Anthony Edwards was kind of sexy in this movie, and I've never thought that about him before. And I was like, what? Maybe it was the gray hair. I don't know. Something was working for me.
Well, I mean, he has hair. Normally, he's not known for having a lot of hair.
Oh, right. Maybe that's what it was, because I like a good head of hair.
There was some technology involved in giving Anthony Edwards some hair. That actually was CG. They CG'd all that hair in.
I like their conversations that we actually get back to at the end, like the Japanese food thing, like all these mundane conversations you have with people in a car that seem inconsequential, but do hold meaning to us all in our everyday lives. And also, this is not between them, but I love the little detail. June Diane Raphael plays Mark Ruffalo's wife. When he first gets called to this cab scene, she's like, I'll put the Folgers on. I was like, man, just all those little things made me so happy.
I like at one point they're in a diner and Anthony Edwards is already there eating, and then Ruffalo shows up and just like basically just starts eating his food. Yeah, they have a fun dynamic, so I enjoy watching them, and it's kind of like same with Jake Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr. We're just kind of bouncing back and forth between these two pairs of characters while they're like simultaneously investigating the same thing. So I think that's part of what makes this first chunk so entertaining, is there's just so much like interesting procedural stuff happening, and I think both these sets of characters bounce off of each other so well that they're just like incredibly entertaining to watch. And I think it also works as an exposition device, because there's always people explaining or talking through the case to each other throughout the movie. I think that is also something this movie just does well generally, is how it gives you, the audience, the information, the relevant details of how things are happening. Like, it's not... You can do that really ham-fistedly. Like, there's a really just sloppy way to have one character explain plot details to another character so that the audience understands. I think this movie executes it well in, like, every single case.
I agree. And there's so much information we are given. But it doesn't... Sometimes I watch movies like this and I get so lost. I'm like, who is who? Where are we going? What is that name they're talking about? I was never lost for one moment in this movie. They present it not only in interesting ways, but like it's super clear, and like you said, it's done in a way where you don't really even realize that you're just being fed information that's relevant to the plot.
Yeah, I think the first time I noticed it, there's two moments where it's fairly obvious, I guess. One is a scene around this part of the movie where it's Bill on the phone with all of the different police departments that have had like cases and stuff like that. I think that's a good scene, one, because I like all of those character actors who are playing those roles. Like, I think even those characters, they only show up for, a few minutes overall in the whole movie, but I buy those all as like real people with personalities and stuff like that. And it's just rapid fire explaining, like, we've got this piece of evidence that happened here and this happened here, and we'll get this to you, and blah, blah, blah. I think that's executed incredibly well.
I agree. Elias Koteas, just a big shout out to him. He's one of my favorite actors, and like whenever he pops up in something, I'm so excited. Also, he's Canadian, so...
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Dermot Mulroney shows up as the like cool police boss guy. I don't know exactly what his like rank is, but I like him. Looks badass.
Yeah, he's great. I like also Philip Baker Hall, who's not one of the police officers. He's the handwriting analyst. There's something so comforting to me about this man, not his character, but just the man. He reminds me of like old men that were around when I grew up, even though his character is kind of a dink a little bit. He's not the worst, but he's not the greatest. He
seems okay. He's
fine. I think I have a gross taste in my mouth from him from Magnolia, because he's in Magnolia and he's makes me uncomfortable in that movie.
I've not seen that in forever, so I did not recognize this actor. I don't know him from anything else.
Oh, his voice is so distinct, I think, that that's as soon as I heard it, because I like his physicality, I didn't recognize his face at first. But as soon as he started talking, I was like, oh man, it's my guy.
What did you think of Brian Cox as Melvin Belli?
What a jerk.
He's great.
Brian Cox is the perfect jerk. He's still somehow, you're like, this guy's kind of cool, but he's such an asshole.
Yeah, he's one of the high points of this movie. I love his character because he's just like full of himself as a TV personality. Like, he clearly thinks he's like something special. And Brian Cox just like plays that so well. A lot of fun dialogue when he's like in the car. He's like laying in the back seat. Are these windows bulletproof? Like, dear Lord, do you ever clean this car?
Are those animal crackers?
Yeah. And then when he's like talking to the Zodiac quote unquote guy on TV, he's like, oh, I have headaches too, but a chiropractor stopped them a week ago.
Yeah, I remember him being more present in this film, but he's really only in and out very quickly. But I guess, that's the kind of splash Brian Cox makes.
Yeah, he's very memorable. He gets good lines, and he's got personality. My favorite bit character is the coffee guy.
Yeah.
Whose name I forgot. I know he has a name.
I love him. I love when Jake Gyllenhaal was like, when he's telling him, well, that's why all the guys call you the R word or whatever. And he's like, what? Nobody calls me that.
Like, sure.
That was a cute bit. Yeah.
When they're watching in the office, the television scene with Martin Belli, the Zodiac guy says something, and then the coffee guy just goes, that's fucked up. And then in a scene right after that, like another letter comes in, and every time a letter comes in, everybody is all in that, editorial office, like reading it and seeing what's going on. And even he is in there, like in the back, just sitting there observing what's going on.
Yeah.
I like the part where Paul and Robert drink in the bar and talk about the case, and they're drinking what looks like windshield wiper fluid.
Yeah, that was a great scene. I feel like that really established their relationship, like at that point. Jake Gyllenhaal. I love this sign. I love to read. I enjoy books. Those are the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good scene. It's always a good scene when two characters get drunk together and finally reveal themselves to each other.
Yeah. But like they're not even, you don't learn anything new about either of them, but I think like at that point Robert Downey Jr.'s character is like kind of accepted. He wants to hang out with the kid and see what's going on, but he's like flabbergasted by him at the same time. I think they do a really good job in this movie of like kind of just showing that guy's decline due to drugs and alcohol. Like it just progresses at a very, expected rate throughout the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And it's kind of funny because the character's funny and there's sort of like moments that are humorous, but it's also incredibly sad. Like by the end, you just feel really bad for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty heartbreaking to watch.
So we get another intense scene, which is with the woman driving her car. This is, cautionary tale, never to trust anyone or help anyone ever.
Yeah. Also, another scene I remembered very, very well. It's so brutal. The line, when I'm done with them, they don't need much help. That is like burned into my brain. I feel physically uncomfortable watching this scene. It is played so well. It is shot so well. I think it is, I don't want to speak for all women, but I think it's every woman's nightmare.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. The line where he says, "Before I kill you, I'm going to throw your baby out the window," is like, that's like scary in the way seeing someone get stabbed is scary.
Yeah, it's and before that, we also get him acknowledging, "I didn't know you had a baby," and she's like, "Is that okay?" And he's whatever he says,
the more the merrier.
You're right. Right. So for a moment, you think they give you this little nugget like, oh, maybe he has some humanity to him. Maybe he is going to, actually keep this woman safe for sake of the baby. Maybe he's not as quite a horrible monster as we think he is. And then he gives her that line and you're like, oh, she's fucked. She's like, those scenarios where there is no possibility for escape. Well, she does escape when she throws herself out of the vehicle, but where that's the only thing, you risk death or you are face certain death. Even thinking about it, I feel like I'm in a barf. It's so unsettling. And so, just a perfectly filmed scene, I think.
Paul gets a card with a piece of bloody shirt in it. Just the thing I noticed about this scene watching it this time is he opens the card and freaks out and throws it on the ground, and then Jake Gyllenhaal goes and opens it with his foot or something, and when he sees the bloody shirt, he is so happy and excited. Like his face is just like
One interesting thing that I sort of read into more when I had seen this movie a while ago was that there was possibly some suspicion that one of the journalists, and maybe Jake Gyllenhaal's character, was actually Zodiac or was more involved or something like that. But I didn't read that at all this time. So I'm not really sure where I was, what I was reading into the first couple of times I saw this, because things like that are kind of weird and gross. But maybe it was those tiny little things that made me think, or maybe because I know this case a little bit better than I did at that time. I'm more educated about, true crime and what the Zodiac case is. I don't know.
I think some of the early interactions with Paul Avery kind of allude to that a little bit, because he does ask him how did you know the Zodiac wouldn't give his name, or he knows about the dangerous game. It does kind of he is a bit suspicious of him, of what is this kid's deal, I don't know if he's going so far as to think he is the Zodiac, but the things he asked could imply that. So could be those details.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot also there's that scene where they say, oh, he put his name in the cipher. And Jake Gyllenhaal's just like standing there like kind of a creep, and he's like, he's not going to give us his
looming.
Name. Yeah.
We meet Melanie, played by Chloe Sevigny, and their first date essentially encompasses what their entire relationship is, at least as presented in this movie. And she says later, it was the date that never ended. He's on that first date just fucking around with the Zodiac case. He's got too much to do there. But she kind of sticks through it because she's a little entertained and I guess likes him.
Yeah, this is an interesting relationship. So it's not like super developed, and I get why they, if this is not a movie about their relationship and the deterioration of the relationship, the fact that his obsession with Zodiac has on the relationship is relevant to the story in terms of like his personal experience. I don't know how I feel about, there are so many films like this or TV shows where we are seeing things from a man's it's usually a man and a woman, and we're seeing things from a man's perspective of like, he's working really hard and he's a good man and he wants answers and he's got to crack the case or he's gonna whatever. And then the woman, because we don't see her actual story, in reality, she's at home taking care of the kids, balancing all these other things with a very absent partner. But usually in films, we're kind of just presented with like,
you have to fill in those pieces yourself.
Yeah. And she's kind of a bitch. And she's like, excuse me, like, don't, that scene at the table where she's like putting her head in front of the TV because he's trying to watch the TV. And it is presented like these women are kind of like not understanding or not loving their partners as much as they should, or not being as supportive as they should. And that's just something I've noticed in a lot of films. And it kind of irks me a little bit. I mean, I get it. And it works to an extent. But because we don't get the other side of that story, I think sometimes that's how it really plays, is like, this partner's kind of a bitch. She doesn't get it. She's not being supportive. This poor guy's like just trying to do a good thing. I don't like that.
Do you think that's how it plays out in this movie?
A little bit. Because we don't see much of their relationship. It's like when we do see him with the kids, it's very positive. They clearly love him. They're interacting in really positive ways. They're not like, Daddy, where are you? So it's like, it's presented as if he is a good father, if a little bit absent, and she's very stern. Like, there aren't a lot of moments of joy with her. Mm-hmm. She's quite a serious person, or I'm at my mom's, don't call, things like that. I think with a lot of the narrative and the rhetoric we have in our culture, that definitely can read as, well, she's being a bit harsh and unfair to him.
I actually don't read it that way. Maybe because I've seen it so many times. I think I have a pretty clear read on that character and how she's presented. I think she is presented as, like, definitely you don't see much from her perspective, or really a lot about their relationship. It's sort of, you have to fill in a lot of the blanks, like they go on a date and then like shortly after, like they have a kid, so a lot of stuff has transpired that you haven't seen. I think they actually do a good job of making her very sympathetic, and making it clear that like Robert is fucking around with the Zodiac stuff and not being a good father. You do see him with the kids and they're like, yay, daddy, having fun and stuff like that. But they also drop a lot of allusions to him not being there for her. Like, he says, how was your day? And she just says long, like, because he got home late because he was, I was out doing a Zodiac thing. And he's going public with the Zodiac stuff and putting their name out there. Like, she is complaining. Like, I guess you could say she's kind of a nag in that sense, where she's like, why did you do this? And, publicize the fact that you're investigating this killer, or why are you never home? Or, we're having family dinner and you're watching the TV, and, she does the head shift over thing, which like does look kind of passive aggressive, but I just see all that stuff and I see it as like, you're crazy if you're not like understanding where she's coming from here, you know? Like the fact that I feel like more than a lot of other stories where none of this would really even be conveyed in any way, I think the movie actually does kind of convey that he's just being really negligent, you know? And I don't think she comes across as actually very nice and supportive, even when she is kind of like, you know, like she's like, all right, go watch it in the living room, you know, like, fine. You know, she kind of goes along with it to a degree. I actually got a read of like sympathy from her. It's kind of like Fight Club and Marla Singer. I actually watched that movie and feel like once you realize the character two-person thing that's going on there, and that from her perspective she sees it as a single person, that makes her incredibly like, I can kind of picture it from her perspective and just be like, wow, like this is not a good time for her.
Yeah, I get the Fight Club example. I think she's more present. We get, for some reason, I think we get more of an insight into who this person is as an individual. I'm sympathetic to Chloe Sevigny's character, but that sort of presentation of it is something we see so often in film that it sometimes irks me a little. We see it so often, and it's rarely from the other perspective or, anyway.
But this is Zodiac. This is not wife of guy who wrote Zodiac book, the movie.
This is a tale about the men who tried to catch Zodiac. The men.
Zodiac's for the boys. There's a montage scene I really like of like they have to go back to the drawing board and start investigating tips and stuff like that at one point, and there's just all these people kind of either claiming to know who it is or that they are the Zodiac. I like the woman who's like, how did you kill him? With a gun? No, a hammer.
Yeah, that was good. Again, humor, which I forgot about in this movie.
Yeah, it's a funny little, like there's like 4 or 5 different people we see and they all have goofy lines that I laughed at. We get introduced to Arthur Lee Allen as the suspect, and pretty much declared person to be Zodiac from the perspective of this movie. Played by John Carroll Lynch, who I really know from 2 things. One is the Drew Carey Show, where I think he played Drew Carey's brother.
Oh,
and the other is Fargo, where he plays the husband to the Frances McDormand character, and he's like this sweet doting husband.
I've not seen Fargo.
Wow.
Yeah, he kind of pops up in all kinds of things. He's one of those. There's so many great character actors in this movie.
Yeah, I think he's really good in this role. The scene where they go to his work and they're in a break room and they talk to him about the case, I think that's another like just really well presented kind of intense scene. You know, he's got this disposition that is like interesting. Like he kind of seems like he could be like a gentle guy, you know, like a big gentle giant, maybe a little effeminate, but also like menacing. You know, you can kind of see it in this a bit. And the way they present it is like with lots of just like straight on close-ups of the different actors like looking right into the camera as they're talking to each other, which gives it like an intensity.
I love that scene too. I think this time watching it, they really just set up all of these points that are like, oh shit, this guy's the guy. Like there are just too many clues that point to him, or too much evidence that points to him. Circumstantial, but which then obviously makes everything that comes later so much more frustrating to watch when they can't pin it on him. But menacing in the sense that it's like he's playing a game. That's so gross. And I mean, that's Zodiac's thing. So gross and so creepy.
Yeah, when they do the stare down at the end, well done. Yeah, so police procedural stuff happens, and eventually they can't investigate him, but then they can because he moved somewhere else, and they can get a warrant there. So they go into his trailer, which is like super fucking
full of
gross.
Squirrels.
Yeah, squirrels in the trailer in the freezer, and they find a bunch of what looks to be evidence, and then 5 minutes later you find out, nope, it's not him.
Can I just say, this has nothing to do with the actual plot. Have we already gone on a plane ride with Robert Downey Jr. and I don't even remember who else was on the plane?
It was all the cops. No, I kind of skipped over that.
Okay, because this is of no consequence, but I just wanted to point this out. There's a flight attendant that says, remember, smoking is in the last 6 aisles only. And then immediately afterwards, we hear someone coughing. There is a lot of coughing in this movie. I don't know if you noticed that, but next time you watch it, I didn't, take note of every time I heard a cough. But it was an interesting moment, and it made me laugh. And I actually went back, I rewound it and was like, wait a minute, did they just announce smoking on a plane and then have a sound effect of somebody coughing?
Yeah.
It was good.
That's maybe some contemporary commentary on the past.
Yeah. Anyway, we can move forward. I really liked that moment.
So we go 4 years into the future here. Well, there's a brief moment before where Robert and Dave Toschi meet and kind of talk to each other a little bit. We flash forward to 4 years later, and then this is kind of like the final act of the movie, and the relationship between Jake Gyllenhaal and Mark Ruffalo's characters becomes like the guiding thing, and it's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, Jake's wild goose chase. I love how it's set up. Like, well, as a cop, I certainly couldn't tell you to go and look into so-and-so.
I'm kind of surprised at how easy he just gives up information like that. He's like, I can't be helping you. We can't be seen together. Go talk to this guy.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know that people would get away with it as much anymore, but I think it kind of harkens back to a time where things felt a little bit more like on the ground rather than digital, or, people faxing or emailing each other things now. Exactly. It kind of shifts into this even the score underneath a lot of this, especially those final scenes. It's very classic murder mystery kind of music and sound. And I really liked it too. It was kind of charming, and their relationship is so uncomfortable, but also it's kind of adorable at the same time.
Yeah.
To watch.
There's highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
The score definitely, I think this is the part of the movie where I actually started noticing it, because they do this thing where they're just playing these kind of sad, jazzy piano chords and have other instruments playing behind it.
There was one moment where I didn't think it worked, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's back to the relationship with Jake and Chloe, Robert and Melissa, where they had their kind of showdown, and she's like, why can't you let this go? And he's like, because no one else will do it, or whatever. The score was almost a little cheesy, and in that moment, and I felt like that scene was a bit cheesy. I didn't buy it. I don't know what it was.
That's when she shows up with what I presume were... Oh, no, they weren't divorce papers. I thought they were going to be divorce papers, but I think it actually had some casework stuff in it.
Yeah, someone dropped off to her or something.
Yeah, I think she says, do what you got to do and finish it. That line felt a little movie.
Yeah, maybe they were just trying to wrap that part of the story up. It felt a bit clunky.
So part of the reason this relationship in the movie now exists is because they sort of sever the previous two buddy pairings that we had. Paul Avery ends up disappearing and moving on to his party boat, and Bill and Dave break the band up. I was actually really sad. That scene when he's like, I'm transferring to another department. I was kind of like, dude, you couldn't have told him a couple days before just to, have a proper goodbye or something.
I agree. This was very abrupt. And then he just signed off as if they'll never see each other again. They just worked together for 20 years. And he's like, well, it's been a good one. Anyway, I'll never see you again. Bye-bye. And you see his wife, greet him, and they walk into the home together. This very warmly lit home, and Ruffalo's just on the street in his little dingy car. Pretty brutal.
He's like, I'm not working on this Zodiac shit ever again. I'm just going back to real life. I mean, that's the thing is at this point in the movie, the Zodiac case is Jake's character is obsessed with it, and he's trying to solve it. But for Dave Toschi, it's he wants to solve it too, but it's gone on so long. Like he kind of, there's not much he can do about it. So he sort of had to like move on to other things. But I think it still weighs on him, especially when people say like, why haven't you solved it yet? There's a shot where they are on the street corner where the cab murder happened, and Dave's in his car, kind of sitting there looking at the scene, and then he takes off, and then Jake shows up immediately in a cab. So it kind of shows that they're both in this obsession, but just in different ways. And that's kind of why their relationship works, is because like I think Toschi gets a little sick of what Robert Graysmith is doing, but he does want to see the case solved. So he's just like, all right, buddy, you can go figure this out. I'll just drop you little hints.
Yeah.
So we get the detour into the whole Rick Marshall other guy thing. And I can't remember the specifics of like what happens, but it's, this guy, there's this other guy, and he's got writing that looks kind of similar, and there's all these other details that point to it. He gets some anonymous phone calls saying you need to like follow this lead. And so he goes and meets that guy, Bob Vaughn, and just goes into his house on that dark and stormy night all alone. And it's just like all these like little clues are being dropped that he's about to get murdered.
This scene is really freaky. It's really full of tension. But I also, watching it this time, I remember this scene, but I was going into it, I was like, there's that scene at the end. Who's that with? What's the point there? Like, it's just this red herring and they take us on this little side story for kind of no reason. Like, I don't think this movie needed this. And honestly, I expected better from Fincher, because even though it's a great scene, in the context of the movie, it's just so over dramatic and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the story. Like, I understand them sending us off in a different direction. I understand the concept of a red herring and why that's interesting, or building tension or conflict. I like the scene itself as a standalone, but I hate how it fits into this movie. I don't think they needed it, and that's maybe my one true criticism of this film, is it's a fucking long movie anyway. Did you need this? I don't think so.
Yeah, we are watching the director's cut. Now, I don't know the history of this movie. This is not a movie that I've heard of like a non-director's cut, or like, was the theatrical cut different? I think you're right. I guess it kind of works as part of what this part of the movie is about, is trying to solve the case, which also includes red herrings, and that's what makes it so frustrating and tedious. And but yeah, it doesn't really. It is a red herring, and I think what maybe feels a bit off about it is, if you imagine that this dude definitely didn't do it. Then you think about how the scene plays out from that character's perspective, or what are their motivations. And you're like, why is this guy being so creepy and weird? Right? Like
nobody's in the house.
Yeah.
There's like footsteps upstairs. Come to my basement.
And the way he talks to him is just very like menacing and foreboding. And like when he lets him out, and he's just like, goodbye, Mr. Graysmith. Like it's just,
he's got real like Home Alone neighbor vibes.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe
in real life, this would be horrifying. Why is he behaving this way if he's just like a dude who owned a movie theater?
So like in Home Alone, we were seeing him from Kevin's perspective. That's why he seemed so weird. So are we just seeing this from Jake Gyllenhaal's perspective?
Maybe. Yeah, why does he lock him in the house?
Yeah, okay, that's a fire hazard for sure. Having a door that locks from the inside with a key? What?
Yeah.
Not even legal? So Robert goes to a prison and meets with Stokely from the faculty. Yeah, that's an interesting scene. She's giving some backstory on the first murder, and basically you find out that it might have been Lee. Jake Gyllenhaal, or Robert, is like kind of a dick here. Like he actually is to the point where you're like, man, you're just like losing it, buddy.
He's very aggressive, and she's like, dude, chill.
Well, he's like, just say it was Rick. Say it. But that, I guess, gives him the break to be certain that it was Arthur Lee Allen. So he goes to Toschi's house in the middle of the night, and he's like, I like that scene, just how pissed off he is. He's like, I'm gonna kill him. Where's my gun?
Yeah.
But then they go to a coffee shop and he like lays everything out, and Dave is like convinced mostly. You know, he's like, you can't prove it, but you know, I kind of believe you. Well, he doesn't say that. He says like, you know, as a cop, I can't say. And he's like, well, what about, you know, otherwise? And he's like, I can only say as a cop.
Yeah, I like that scene. It was kind of a sweet moment, like a moment of closure for both of them, where they're even if nothing can be done, at least they will be able to rest easy, maybe knowing within their hearts they know who it is.
I think Dave is like sufficiently impressed with Robert Graysmith's like investigative abilities. Like he's like, you did good.
That's one thing I liked about I liked about this movie is there's like jurisdictional kind of stuff that is brought up a few times, and like sort of the bureaucracy that's involved in law enforcement and journalism and particular to this time as well. But I kind of like to see law enforcement from different jurisdictions and also journalists kind of working together. And it wasn't like this thing where like one guy's got this big ego, like, hey, get out of here. I'm not going to share this information with you. That wasn't part of the story, which I appreciated because we've seen that a billion times.
Yeah, that's a pretty common trope in any kind of like police thing, is like fights over jurisdiction. Like, this is our case and we're taking over the case and you're not needed here anymore. I think what this movie did is like show that there are tensions between different jurisdictions and stuff, but it seemed to mostly be like bureaucratic and logistical rather than just like weird turf wars. Yeah.
It was nice to see. Look, if we all work together, the more we work together.
What if we just had one giant police department that shared all of the information with each other?
What a concept.
The lesson of the movie. So we get flash forward to about 7.5 years later. Robert's book is out, and we see Liam McPoyle is a grown-up version of the young man in the beginning who got shot. And this is a kind of intense scene. Good closer.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice. Like it provides the viewer closure, and sets it up, lets us go with a bit of tension and not just like, wow, everything's wrapped up really nicely with a neat bow. It still hits pretty hard.
Yeah, the way I think the performance, Jimmy Simpson is the actor who plays him. Like, he's in the movie for like a minute, but like I really was just impressed with how he played it believably as a guy who, you know, got shot, and clearly this has had an impact on his life. He kind of looks like he might be a drifter or something. And I also like the cop who is showing him the photographs, because he's just like, you can tell that like as soon as he says he thinks it's the guy, he's just like incredibly excited, freaked out, you know, so he's really trying to play it cool and be like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And then the Donovan song plays again, and it's really sad sounding. And then we get the post credits basically saying, that Arthur Lee Allen dude died right before they could interview him again after he was ID'd, and that Robert Graysmith didn't get any phone calls after the guy died.
Yeah.
So the movie has a pretty clear, and I presume like this movie is based on the book the guy wrote, but I suspect it's more like, I think that book is just like facts and details about the case, and this kind of brought in a whole narrative structure. But I think the book may also be making a similar claim, but I don't know in reality if it is how much this is accepted as the truth or not.
Yeah, I think this is definitely Robert Graysmith's perspective, is that he's convinced that Lee Allen... Wait,
this guy's the Zodiac and my freaking wife.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many theories about Zodiac, which is, I guess, why it's such a story that's still really fascinates people because there was no definitive answer. I mean, and they even say there was DNA that didn't match Arthur Lee Allen's, and some people, I don't know. It's a point of contention for some people who are like really into their true crime.
Do people get in big fights about this online? Are there like different camps? Becomes very tribal.
Maybe. I don't know. I kind of got into true crime really intensely a few years ago, and then like I would be falling asleep to like true crime podcasts and having horrible nightmares and like not even like trusting to leave the house even more than now. So I kind of like laid off it a little while. So this was kind of a revisit back into that world in an entertaining way.
Too much true crime is not good for you.
No, that's what's great about this movie. There's so much levity. And despite the fact that like it feels so real. And I guess like in real life, when you're talking about difficult things, that's what you do. You use humor and you use other ways of coping with it. And I love a really dark, moody drama, but I think Fincher does that so well. Like he takes these really dark, weird, sometimes awful people, and he makes it so believable. It's like, I don't know. I just think it's masterful. This is such a well-made film and well-paced, except for that weird house scene at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Zodiac. Was there any other like scenes or details or characters you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so. I plugged in my little smoking on the airplane note earlier. Yeah, I think people should watch it. Rewatch it if you've seen it before, or go watch it if you haven't seen it, but not if you're really triggered by this kind of thing, because it is pretty brutal. Some of those scenes are... It's not terribly gory or anything. It's just the tension that is built, and it is so real, and it feels like this is really how it does happen, which makes it so much more upsetting, I think. But I give this movie like... For me, this movie is like a 9 out of 10 cryptic ciphers.
Yeah, Zodiac, I think, is like one of the best procedural movies you're ever going to find. Mm-hmm. If you like police procedural stuff, if you like true crime, if you like David Fincher, if you like these actors and humor, it has all of those things, mm-hmm. and it puts them together incredibly well to make just like a really compelling watch. I am gonna take down my 10. I'm gonna bring it to a 9.5, just because if I'm honest, I do think the last hour, like that scene in particular that you're mentioning, like it's well done, but it kind of, it's just there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm gonna give it 9.5 Paul Avery party boats out of 10.
Awesome.
That is it for this week's episode of Ex Post Watcho. Thank you very much for listening. We would love if you got in touch with us. You can email us at expostwatcho@gmail.com. And we're on social media at expostwatcho. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll be back next week as we watch The Last Unicorn. Thanks for listening, everybody, and goodbye.